YouTube and Facebook. Alrighty, here we go. And check to make sure the streaming is working. Let's see. The streaming is working? It is working. That's very good. Okay, everybody. Good to see everybody. Okay, so we will get started, if that's all right with everybody. And we are reading from the Nectar of Instruction. So, let's chant first. We're going to chant Ohe Vaishnava Thakur. That means, O Venerable Vaishnava. Ohe Vaishnava Thakur, Dayana Sagare Say Vaishnava Thakur, Maharasana, Yasai Nagori, Niyaparajaya, Shukaya Maya, Kumaraja. Para Jaya Shodaya Maya Tomara Charanari Jaya Veda Tami Shishodi Jaya Guna Say Sangha Neoya Mare Mokshaji Sangha Say Jaya Satsanga Neoya Mare Mokshaji Sangha Kaki Mara Boya Nama Sangye Kaki Mara Boya Nama Sangye Krishna Namajane Umi Makori Shana Vindudiya Deo Krishna Namajane Krishna say Tomara Paru Krishna Krishna Boli Jayatava Bhaje Amito Kangala Krishna Krishna Boli Jayatava Bhaje Om Vaishnava Yasada Say Guruna Gori Niyapatachaya Shunaya Maya Tomara Churana Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Rama Rama Rama, Adi Adi Hare Krishna, Adi Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare, Adi Adi Rama, Rama Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Rama 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 Hare. Prabhupada, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Haribo, oh Haribo, oh Jaiko, Haribo. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parabhakacharya Alsuteta Satishi Shimad His Divine Grace Sabaya Charana the Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Param Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shiva Siddhi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radhakrishna Gopa Gopinath Swayam Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Mathuram Ki Jai Jagannath Swami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Srimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tunamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Dejatari. Let me read the translation. O Venerable Vaishnava, Ocean of Mercy, be merciful unto your servant. Give me the shade of your lotus feet and purify me. I hold on to your lotus feet. Teach me to control my 6 passions, rectify my 6 faults. Bestow upon me the 6 qualities and offer unto me the 6 kinds of holy association. I do not find the strength to carry on alone the Sankirtan of the holy name of Hari. Please bless me by giving me just 1 drop of faith, with which to obtain the great treasure of the holy name of Krishna. Krishna is yours. You have the power to give him to me. I'm simply running behind you, shouting, Krishna, Krishna. Okay? So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. So now we will, what are we going to do? Om Ganatimananda Shagaranjana Shlakaya Chakshurun Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. And we're going to go on to the Nectar of Instruction, written by Srila Rupa Goswami and translated and commented on by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. I just want to say one thing, because some of you may be wondering why there's a bandage on my head. So that's just because my skin doctor is taking a biopsy of something up there. That's all. Nothing serious. Okay. Just a biopsy, and they had to cut a little piece just to get a little piece for the biopsy. Okay. And so it's just temporary. Like anything else in this world, this body is temporary. Everything is temporary. So don't worry. So let us go. First we'll chant this verse. Nana shastra vicharanaikanipano sadharma samstapako lokanam hitakarano tribhuvane manyo shavanyakaro Radha Krishna Padara Vinda Bhajana Nandena Taliko Pande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyago Sri Jiva Gopalako. And the translation is, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the six Goswamis, namely Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatana Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus they are honored all over the three worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of because they are absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna. Jai Goswami Asan. That's a verse is written by Srinivasacharya, and there's 8 verses, but we just chanted that one because it relates to their perusal of all the revealed scriptures in different languages, in fact, and coming up with Sattdharma Samstapako, with eternal religious principles rather than temporary religious injunctions. There's many temporary religious injunctions. And there's eternal religious principles that apply. What do eternal religious principles mean? Those religious principles apply all the time, such as the Sambandha, we are a spirit soul, the Lord is the supreme spirit soul, we are parts and parcels of him, Abhideya, chanting his names is the way to achieve perfection, and Prayojana, going back to home, back to Godhead. So these are the eternal religious principles. Details may change according to different cultures, like how you dress. This dhoti is not an eternal religious principle, nor is the style of tilak. I mean, marking one's body is something that we do, and the different sampradayas, they have different marks on the body, different types of tilak. But the eternal religious principle is chanting the Lord's holy names, and worshiping Tulsi. That's also eternal. Worshiping the deity. These are all eternal religious principles. So we have to distinguish between the eternal and the different manifestations of the eternal according to time, place, and circumstance, and don't confuse the two. Otherwise, you will think that devotees are spiritual, and that pants are not spiritual. There's nothing inherently spiritual about a dhoti, and there's nothing inherently unspiritual or material about pants. Although I like wearing a dhoti, and that's the culture. Cultural items, yes, we accept insofar as that help us to remember Krishna and help others remember Krishna. That's fine. I mean, just like today, these neck beads, very nice, Tulsi, kantimala, which means neck beads. Kantimala. I was at the doctor today, and the doctor looked at the neck beads and said, wow, those are so nice. So I think we could attract a lot of people with neck beads. Okay, on that happy note, let's read from the Sri Upadeshamrita by Srila Rupa Goswami. Shri Upadeshamrita Ki Jai. And of course, today we are going to be reading from what? The second verse in the Upadeshamrita. So this is also a verse that's sort of I wouldn't say negative, it's just what to avoid. The first verse is like what to avoid too, being controlled by the tongue, belly, genitals, mind, anger, and words. And this is more specific insofar as, whoops, let me just change this one thing. I don't need to see that right now. I'm just moving my windows here, windows on the computer. So this is actually more specific insofar as in the process of devotional service, those things that can be impediments and those things that need to be avoided. Okay? So let us start. Yeah, I think it's big enough for everyone to see. So second verse is Achahara prayashascha prachaupo nimagraha jana sangascha loyam cha sadbir bhaktir vinashati. So the translation, word by word, is ati ahara, overeating or too much collecting. Prayasaha, over endeavoring. Cha, and. Pajalpaha, idle talk. Niyama, rules and regulations. Agraha, too much attachment to. Or agraha, too much neglect of. Jana sangaha, association with worldly minded persons. Cha, and lolyam, which means ardent longing or greed. Also, loyum is a cause of spiritual advancement if it's ardent longing or greed for a spiritual perfection. We were talking about this the other day. Cha and sadbihi. By these six, bhaktihi, devotional service, vinashati, wow, is destroyed. Wow. Okay, so let's read the translation. One's devotional service is spoiled when he becomes too entangled in the following six activities: eating more than necessary or collecting more funds than required. So, of course, this can be connected with the first verse, which is, Vacho Vegam, Manasakrota Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Udarapashta Vegam, which also talks about eating too much. Vacho Vegam, Manasa, or the mind, like that. 2, over endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain. It's from the mind also. Greedy. 3, talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters. Unnecessarily. Sometimes you got to talk about them, but unnecessarily. 4, practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them. That means just being ritualistic. Like putting yourself on, as I've often said, on automatic pilot, and not for the sake of spiritual advancement. In other words, this is what we do because it's what we do, and I'm doing it, and I'm not even thinking about why I'm doing it. I'm just doing it because I've been doing it for the last 200 years, and I'm scared of giving it up because if I don't do this for the next 200 years, then I may get smashed. So that means just following them because it's automatic pilot. Or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. Both things are bad. Giving up the rules and regulations or following them just because, following them without any purpose or reason, understanding, not even understanding why we have these rules. For example, if you have the 4 regulated principles, you got to know why you follow them. Why do we pick these 4 regulated principles? Why don't we pick something a lot easier to follow? There's a reason. which we may talk about when we read the purport. 5, associating with worldly-minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness. The reason for that is that Karanam Guna Sangasha Sadasat Janma Jondishu, that everybody carries with them certain modes of nature. And when you associate with them, you get that mode of nature. If you associate with an animal, you get that mode of nature. I was listening, actually, today, I was listening to Prabhupada said different animals are associated with different modes of nature. Like a tiger tends to be passionate and ignorant. A monkey is ignorant. Of course, not completely ignorant, because if a monkey was completely ignorant, the monkey wouldn't do anything. But it's pretty much almost ignorant. And a cow is in the mode of goodness. So what does that mean? That means if you associate even with these animals, you develop different types of consciousness. That is so interesting. Like if you associate with monkeys, I mean, not that you should associate with monkeys, then you have very low consciousness. Or if you're taking care of cows and hugging cows, and everyone's experienced when you hug a cow, you actually feel really peaceful. Some places, some farms, they actually charge money for people to hug cows. And people feel so good when they're hugging a cow. Isn't that wonderful? And the last one is being greedy for mundane achievements, just like wanting to achieve something, just greedy, and mind is disturbed. Human life, let's read Prabhupada's purport. Very important verse. Human life is meant for plain living and high thinking. Sometimes the Lord would say simple living. There's a difference between simple living. That doesn't mean wretched living. Prabhupada used the expression plain living. Plain means, don't over-endeavor more, don't be greedy. All these things are actually included in plain living. And high thinking. High thinking means thinking about the purpose of life. Since all conditioned living beings are under the control of the Lord's third energy. Third energy means material energy. It's called Antaranga Shakti. This material world is designed so that one is obliged to work. Obviously, if you don't work, no money. No money, no food. The Supreme Personality of God has 3 primary energies or potencies. The first is called, Antaranga Shakti is the internal potency. I got that wrong. Bahiranga Shakti is the external. So the first is called the Antaranga Shakti, or the internal potency. The second is called the Tatashta Shakti, or the marginal potency. And the third is called the Bahiranga Shakti, or the external potency. Antar means within. Antaranga, like a limb, or expansion, or energy of Krishna. Antaraga, within, that means internal potency. And the Tatashta Shakti is the marginal. That means it can go either way. And Bahiranga means, Bahir means outside, or the external potency. The living entities constitute the marginal potency, and they are situated between the internal and external potencies, being subordinate as external, eternal servants of the Supreme Personality of God, or the Jivatmas, that's us. Jiva Atma, or atomic living entities, us, must remain under the control of either the internal or external potency. When they are under the control of the internal potency, they display their natural constitutional activity, namely constant engagement in the devotional service of the Lord. This is stated in the Bhagavad Gita 9:13. Very important verse. Mahatma tumam partha daivam prakritim ashritaha bhajantyananya anaso gyatva putadam aviyam. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of God, original and inexhaustible. Such an important verse. In the ninth chapter is the most confidential knowledge. Mahatmanas tumam, those who are great souls. Daivim prakriti, that means the internal potency they're taken shelter of. Why? Because bhajantya ananya, they have nothing else to do but worship Krishna. with their mind, body, and words. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is known as original Buddhadim, Avyam, Adim, Avyam, inexhaustible. The word Mahatma refers to those who are broad-minded, liberal-minded, not crippled-minded. Duratma means crippled-minded or bad-minded. The cripple-minded persons always engage in satisfying their senses, sometimes expand their activities in order to do good for others through some ism like nationalism, humanitarianism, or altruism. So all these are extended bodily consciousness. Because my body is American, so I'm interested in nationalism. And because my body is a human body, I'm interested in helping humans, but not animals. I mean, just telling hypothetically, I'm interested in everything. And altruism, of course, is basically trying to help other human beings, the same thing as the bodily consciousness of being a human being and everything associated. That's altruism. And also it means thinking oneself, the doer, because people are suffering or enjoying due to karma. So in order to really help people, of course, we do want to help people externally, but to really help people, we have to give them Krishna consciousness, or else whatever their karma is, they're going to get it. You can't really interfere with the karma. You may think that you're going to save someone, but if he has bad karma and he's meant to pass away, he's going to pass away. And if he's meant to live, even if you don't help him, he will live. But of course, we do help people. A Vaishnava is naturally compassionate, doesn't like or allow someone to suffer if he has the ability to help them, even materially. But we do give them Krishna consciousness at the same time. They may reject personal sense gratification for the sense gratification of others, like the members of the family, community, or society, the national, international. All of these activities are extended sense gratification from personal, communal to social, because they're identifying with the people they're helping because of people's identification with their body, even up to the point of humanitarianism. These activities may all be good from the material point of view, but they have no spiritual value. The basis of such activities is sense gratification, either personal or extended. Only when a person gratifies the senses of the Supreme Lord can he be called a Mahatma or a broad-minded person. And when one works for Krishna and gratifies the sense of the Supreme Lord, then he's also a friend to all living entities. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmane vanupashati sarvabhutesha chatmanam tatogna vigupshate. So he sees everyone as part and parcel of Krishna. He sees everyone as brother and sister. Prabhupada said if one sees like that, others as brothers, brother, like St. Francis, then Prabhupada called that first-class God consciousness. First-class God consciousness. In the above quoted verse from Bhagavad Gita, the words Daivam Prakriti refer to the control, the internal potency or pleasure potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This pleasure potency is manifested as Srimati Radharani, or expansion Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. When the individual jiva souls are under the control of the internal energy, their only engagement is the satisfaction of Krishna or Vishnu. This is the position of the Mahatma. If one is not a Mahatma, he is a Duratma or a cripple-minded person. Such mentally crippled Duratmas are put under the control of the Lord's external potency, Maha-Maya. Indeed, all living entities within this material world are under the control of Maha-Maya. That's the material energy. Maya means energy, Maha means great, whose business is to subject them to, this is the part that we don't like, to the influence of the threefold miseries, Adi Daivaka Klesha, sufferings caused by the demigods such as droughts, earthquakes, and storms, and it is so hot here. It is extremamente hot where we are now. And other places like the UK right now, it's so hot that the roads and the bridges are buckling. That's Adidaivaka Klesha. and we get some storms here too. Adibhotaka klesha, sufferings caused by other living entities like insects or enemies, in other words, other people. Sometimes like we're walking outside here and we notice there's a tick on our bodies. What is a tick? A tick is these small creatures who are blood suckers. And they're everywhere around here. Or there's snakes, and they may bite, or they're mosquitoes, or there's other living entities who are attacking us for one reason. And finally, adhyatmika klesha, sufferings caused by one's own body and mind, such as physical and mental infirmities, anxiety, distress, depression, all these different things, or physical, mental infirmities. I mean, just like, recently everybody knows, a few weeks ago I had kidney stones. I'm not sure if I still have them. And it was intense. It was intense. I was basically doubled over and chanting Hare Krishna. And most of the night I just had to walk back and forth chanting the Lord's holy names until the pain subsided a little bit. I can't imagine how much pain this body is capable of giving you. Daiva Bhutat Mahetava, the conditioned soul is subject to these three miseries by the control of the external entities, suffer various difficulties. That's a fact. The main problem confronting the conditioned soul is the repetition of birth, old age, disease, and death. Tell me about it. Like, I'm old. I have an old body. There's certain things that are going wrong, like an old car. And after a while, we have to leave the body, and then we have to take birth again? Oh my God. Spend 9 months in a mother's womb, all clogged up. In the material world, one has to work for the maintenance of the body and soul, but how can one perform such work in a way that is favorable for the execution of Krishna consciousness? In other words, we have to work. Everyone requires possessions. We need food, grains, clothing, money, and other things necessary for the maintenance of the body, but one should not collect more than necessary for his actual basic needs. If this natural principle is followed, there will be no difficulty in maintaining the body under most circumstances. Unless you have really bad karma. And that happens sometimes. According to nature's arrangement, living entities lower on the evolutionary scale do not eat or collect more than necessary. Consequently, in the animal kingdom, there's generally no economic problem or scarcity of necessities. If a bag of rice is placed in a public place, birds will come to eat a few grains and go away. A human being, however, will take away the whole bag. He will eat all his stomach can hold and then try to get the rest in storage, eating too much. That's achahara. According to scriptures, this collecting of more than necessary is achahara is prohibited. Now the entire world is suffering because of it. Yeah. You find that many people, there's a disproportionate share of the world's resources that are held by a small group of people. You actually see that, a disproportionate share, whether we're talking about money or land or facilities that are held by a very, very small group of people. And there's a lot of people in the world who don't even have an adequate supply of water, or to speak of food, or shelter. Large, billions of people in the world. Here we are sitting very comfortably in our home, and with air conditioning and sitting by a computer, and there was enough to eat tonight, and we have running water. We just turn on a spigot. Many people have to walk miles and put, the ladies, they put a pot of water, or container of water on their heads, and they have to walk miles back from some pump to get some polluted water. I mean, the world is just a very cruel place. Collecting and eating more than necessary, or it's called prayasa, or necessary endeavor. Yep. By God's arrangement, in other words, just working hard like an ass. By God's arrangement, anyone in any part of the world can live very peacefully if he has some land or a milk cow. There's no need for man to move from one place to another to earn a livelihood, for one can produce food grains locally and get milk from cows. That can solve all economic problems. Fortunately, man has been given higher intelligence for the cultivation of Krishna consciousness, or the understanding of God, one's relationship with him, and the ultimate goal of life. That's Sambandha Abhidheya and Prayojana. Love of God. Unfortunately, so-called civilized men, not caring for God realization, utilizes his intelligence for getting more than necessary and simply eat to satisfy the tongue. I mean, just like sometimes we're eating food that's brought from halfway around the world with so much expense. If we lived plainly, as Prabhupada said, plain living and high thinking, it'd be different. But anyway, because people are so crazy in Kali Yuga, they wouldn't even allow anyone to live like that in most places. People are so crazy, if you wanted to live simply like that, in most places, government would come after you. By God's arrangement, there is sufficient scope for production of milk and grains for human beings all over the world, but instead of using his higher intelligence to cultivate God consciousness, so-called intelligent men misuse their intelligence to produce many unnecessary, unwanted things. Thus, factories, slaughterhouses, brothels, and liquor shops are opened. If people are advised not to collect too many goods, eat too much, or work unnecessarily, possess artificial amenities, they think they are being advised to return to a primitive way of life. Generally, people do not like to accept plain living and high thinking. That is their unfortunate position, because they're thinking, I'm going to be miserable. And I've found in the past that once one has moved into modern conveniences, even if his family or previously he or she was living on a farm and living very simply, then they can't go back. They just find it mentally. They can go back. But mentally they find it's just like, how can I go back? How can I live without a flush toilet or hot running water? How can I live without going to the grocery store or supermarket and being able to buy kiwi fruit when you're not in New Zealand, buy kiwi fruit anywhere in the world. I mean, even now, if you go to India and you go to Delhi in the markets, they have food that's flown in from all over the world in refrigerated airplanes or something like that. Refrigerated containers. I think the containers are refrigerated. Or on boats like that. Prabhupada actually said you'll be healthy if you eat food that's cooked, or let's say eat food that's grown locally, cooked locally, obviously, fresh food. Human life is meant for God realization, and the human being is given higher intelligence for this purpose. Those who believe that this higher intelligence is meant to attain a higher state should follow the instructions of the Vedic literature. Higher state means the purpose of life. By taking such instructions from higher authorities, one can actually become situated in perfect knowledge and give real meaning to life. Otherwise, what's the meaning? In the Srimad Bhagavatam 129, Sutta Goswami describes the proper human dharma in this way. Dhammasya yavivargasya narta ritayo bhakopate nartasya narma ikantasya kamo labhaya hismita. All occupational engagements, dharma, are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service, dharma, should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. That's a very high standard. Insofar as possible. I mean, we need some sense gratification. Prabhupada said that sense gratification can be considered to be like salt. Like if you take too much salt, it can damage the kidneys, it can give you high blood pressure, so many things. And if you take too little salt, then everything's tasteless and you lose your enthusiasm to eat. So therefore, the right amount of salt has to be the right amount of sense gratification. Everybody has different needs in terms of sense gratification. So we identify our needs and we accept what's necessary to gratify the senses. It's like everybody has a different type of body, everybody has a different type of car, different cars need different types of maintenance or sustenance, not sustenance obviously, but maintenance, and different things like that, or different types of petrol, or diesel, or electricity, okay? The first step in human civilization consists of occupational engagements according to the scriptural injunctions. The higher intelligence of a human being should be trained to understand basic dharma. In human society, there are various religious conceptions characterized as Hindu, Christian, Hebrew, Mohammedan, Buddhist, and so on. For without religion, human society is no better than animal society. Because religion gives us a transcendent reason for at least being ethical. If you throw out religion and you're just into scientism, that life comes from matter and everything has no meaning, nothing is real, strawberry fields forever. If one has that particular consciousness, then there's no reason for being ethical. Then it's might makes right. Survival of the fittest, which is the same thing Darwin talked about, survival of the fittest. So, therefore, you need some religious conception, even to keep you off the animal platform. And some people don't have a religious conception or don't have an ultimate meaning in life, some transcendent meaning. Then, and if they're not interested in sense gratification, they just go crazy because they just think there's no meaning. Existentialism. There's no meaning in life. That's what existentialism is. There's no meaning, or you make your own meaning. And you make your own meaning. Let's say if there's no meaning and you make your own meaning, that's very interesting. Sometimes I like making my own meaning. So if there's no meaning and you make your own meaning, then you realize that it's just all illusion, and so nothing matters. It doesn't matter if you're dead. It doesn't matter if you're alive. There's no life after death, and then you just like go crazy, as many of these existentialist philosophers did. As stated above, dharmasya yapavargasya narto ratayo pakalpate, Bhagavatam 129. Religion is meant for attaining emancipation, not for getting bread. The Prophet, of course, is making indirect reference to the Christian prayer to give us this day our daily bread. Sometimes human society manufactures a system of so-called religion aimed at material advancement, but that is far from the purpose of true Dharma, something like Scientology. Religion entails understanding the laws of God, because the proper execution of these laws ultimately leads one out of material entanglement. That is the true purpose of religion. Unfortunately, people accept religion for material prosperity because of achahara, excessive desire for such prosperity. True religion, however, instructs people to be satisfied with the bare necessities of life while cultivating Krishna consciousness. Even though we require economic development, true religion allows it only for supplying the bare necessities of life. Jivasa tapat gigyasa. The real purpose of life is to inquire about the absolute truth. What's life all about? What's the purpose of life? Why am I here? Where am I going? Before I came to Krishna consciousness, I was asking a question, nobody could answer it. And Prabhupada was the first one to answer those questions. If our endeavor, prayasa, is not to inquire about the absolute truth, we will simply increase our endeavor to satisfy our artificial needs. A spiritual aspirant should avoid mundane endeavor. Insofar as possible, you need some mundane endeavor. As I mentioned, you need some sense gratification, but just like not too much salt. Another impediment is prajalpa, unnecessary talking. When we mix with a few friends, we immediately begin unnecessary talking, sounding like croaking toads. If we must talk, we should talk about the Krishna consciousness movement. Those outside of the Krishna consciousness movement are interested in reading heaps of newspapers, magazines, and novels, solving crossword puzzles, and doing many other nonsensical things. In this fashion, people simply waste their valuable time and energy. In the Western countries, old men retired from active life play cards, fish, yuck, watch television, debate about useless socio-political schemes. All these and other frivolous activities are included in the prajalpa category. Intelligent persons interested in Krishna consciousness should never take part in such activities. Because in those days, the Prabhupada wrote this. There was no internet, so now there's a lot more prajalpa. There's Facebook and social networking sites, and you can just spend all your time wasting your time, but to speak of the news, you got CNN, BBC, USA Today, sorry, not together. They're not together. You have, anyway, in each country you got all these websites with the news. You just get addicted. And then so much of your human form of life, which is very rare, durlabam manasa janma, then is wasted. You can't get back 1 minute that you do not use in Krishna consciousness. Jana Sangha refers to associating with persons not interested in Krishna consciousness. One should strictly avoid such association. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has therefore advised us to live only in the association of Krishna conscious devotees. Bhaktya Sanevasa. One should always engage in the service of the Lord in the association of the Lord's devotees. Association with those engaged in a similar line of business is very conducive to advancement in that business. That's why they have business association. Actually, Prabhupada says that. Consequently, materialistic persons form various associations and clubs to enhance their endeavors. They even have magazines. Prabhupada one time commented, there's a magazine for everything. There's a magazine for sports car drivers, a magazine for people who smoke a particular type of cigarette. There's a magazine for people who exercise in a particular way. There's a magazine for hatha yoga. There's thousands of different magazines. Of course, a lot of it's online now. And in one sense, it's better online because in this way, they are not cutting down so many trees for their nonsense. They're still doing nonsense, but at least the trees are not suffering as much, having to supply all the paper for all these stupid magazines and newspapers. I remember when I was young, the Sunday newspaper would come. It would be like a stack. It was like almost like a foot deep. There's a business section. There's a section on fashion, women's fashion. There's a section on real estate. There's a section on, of course, the news. There's a section on science. There's a section on the movies. There's a section on the TV. Ooh. Remember, that was the New York Times. I don't know if they still do that. For example, in the business world, we find such institutions as the Stock Exchange and Chamber of Commerce. Similarly, we have established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness to give people an opportunity to associate with those who have not forgotten Krishna. This spiritual association offered by our ISKCON movement is increasing day by day. Many people from different parts of the world are joining this society to awaken their dormant Krishna consciousness. Okay, one more paragraph. Anuvriti commentary. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes in his Anuvriti commentary on the Upadeshamrita that too much endeavor to acquire knowledge on the part of mental speculators or dry philosophers falls within the category of atyahara, collecting more than necessary. Because, people like to learn a lot about history. People like to... It's just, if you need it for your service to Krishna, fine. If you need it to make money, fine. But just to titillate your brain, it's like rubbing your brain against all these different, of course not books, but the internet information and everything like that. It's a waste of your human form of life. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, the endeavor of philosophical speculators to write volumes of books on dry philosophy devoid of Krishna consciousness is entirely futile. The work of karmis who write volumes of books on economic development also falls within the category of atyahara. That means collecting too much. It's an over endeavor, so getting ready to write something. Atyahara. Similarly, those who have no desire for Krishna consciousness who are simply interested in progressing more and more material things, either in the shape of scientific knowledge or monetary gain, are all included under the control of atyahara. So we're ending in the middle of the purport. Atyahara, verse number 2. Let me just mark this down. Karmis. Okay. Now, since it's time, we will, because we always end 10 minutes before the hour, we will allow you all to ask questions. And we will unmute or allow you to unmute yourselves. All right, here's a question in the chat window. Hare Krishna Gurudev, how can one endeavor to spread Krishna consciousness without associating with non-devotees? When you spread Krishna consciousness, your endeavor to do that, you're not associating with the person. Associating with the person means like dadati pratigurnati guyamakyati prichati, like the intimate association we may have with devotees, like accepting food cooked by people not Krishna conscious, taking advice from people that are not Krishna conscious. Unless you need psychiatric advice, which is fine. But forming intimate friendships with people who are not Krishna consciousness, all these things can affect the consciousness. But when our endeavor is to make friends with people so we can give them Krishna, then you're associating with Krishna. You're not actually associating with the person's modes of nature. See, the problem is people who are not Krishna conscious, they carry with them the modes of nature. I mentioned that in the beginning of class. That by associating with the modes of nature that they carry, it's like us associating with certain colors of paint. And when you associate with certain colors of paint, the color rubs off. And when it rubs off, you get that particular color. You're so fortunate to get that particular color. So, that answers your question. And there's another question here. You mentioned the cow in the mode of goodness and hugging a cow gives peace. What about therapy dogs at the hospital? Any other animal they consider in the mode of goodness? No, dogs are not in the mode of goodness. When my daughter is upset, crying, my dog immediately jumps on her, hugs, and starts licking her tears. She immediately feels peace and happiness. That's good. I mean, it's a therapy thing. I'm not going to complain about that. It doesn't bring one to the point of thinking of Krishna. But it can actually pacify some emotions if one has a need for physical touch. So we're talking about something different here. You know, people have different needs, material needs as well as spiritual needs. One of the needs that we have, all of us, everyone, is for physical touch. So physical touch and someone to love us. Of course, Krishna loves us. Obviously, when one's a pure devotee, then that loving relationship with Krishna's holy name satisfies a lot of those needs, even the basic human needs. So that's fine with the dog. Go ahead and keep doing it. If it pacifies her, and she's struggling. I mean, sometimes we do have to accept advice. I know many devotees who are struggling with emotional needs, and they see therapists, psychologists, or psychiatrists, and they help them. Yeah, they help them and deal with that. At least come to the platform of being calmed down, so that maybe they can chant the Lord's holy names with attention. So that's the whole point. So we have to take material means sometimes. We're not saying you just chant Hare Krishna every time there's a material problem. Like if your car runs out of petrol, just get more petrol. Don't chant Hare Krishna. Oh, chant Hare Krishna, but get more petrol at the same time. So you got, just like I go to the doctor, like you see this thing on the head, or the body's head, not my head. So I go to the doctor. I didn't just chant Hare Krishna. That would be kind of stupid. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. When I want to eat, then I cook and offer something to Krishna. I don't just chant Hare Krishna. I chant Hare Krishna, but not just chant Hare Krishna. So, okay. Someone just prayed for my good health. I need all the prayers that you can all give me. Thank you. So, okay, Gopal Das, you have a question. You can unmute yourself. Haribol.
So you were mentioning you go to the doctor instead of just chanting Hare Krishna, or you do, some other endeavor instead of just chanting Hare Krishna. If you didn't do that, if you just chanted Hare Krishna instead of making the endeavor, wouldn't that be engaging Krishna in your service?
Or wanting to engage Krishna in my service.
Trying to?
Yeah. It's not
So
that
that would be
Krishna would agree.
right. So that would be the opposite of actual Krishna consciousness,
Yeah,
the way
because
we're talking about it.
Krishna sent the doctor facility. He sent the food. He sent all these things. So that's that typical story that Prabhupada tells about the man who had so much faith in Krishna that when his whole village was being flooded, he refused to accept the help when the water was rising. He refused to accept the help of a boat that was sent by Krishna. Krishna wasn't rowing the boat, but anyway, it's Krishna doing these things because Yomam Pashati Sarvatra Sarvam Chamai Pashati Tashaham Na Pranashami Sacha Me Na Pranashati. Once you see Krishna and everything and Krishna everywhere. So he refused to accept the help of a boat. He went up to this roof when the water rose even further. He refused to grab onto the rope that was thrown from the helicopter. And then he went to God later on after he died. And God said, you fool. Didn't you see the boat and didn't you see the helicopter I sent to help you? So we should understand all these things are coming from Krishna. It's not that we just sit back and just chant Hare Krishna. We chant Hare Krishna, but not just sit back and chant Hare Krishna. We have to do our prescribed duties. Like Arjuna, he just wanted to sit back and chant Hare Krishna. And Krishna said, you're just foolish. It's foolish. You do your prescribed duty. You have a right to the prescribed duty, but you don't have a right to the results. Okay. Good question. Anybody else have a question? We have 3 more minutes. You can raise your hand, or you can unmute yourself. Oh, here, it's a question from Rishikesh. What does it mean to be dependent on Krishna? Be dependent on Krishna means that we see everything in this world as coming from Krishna, and if we accept it as Krishna sent. We understand that whatever happens is for what happens outside of our control is the Lord's arrangement for our benefit. The main thing is to understand that whatever happened, whatever facility we're given, has actually been arranged by Krishna for our benefit. That means dependent on him. Not that we just don't do anything, but we see Krishna behind everything. We understand what Krishna wants us to learn from it, and we act appropriately. I mean, just like even old age, which unfortunately I'm experiencing. Old age. I never thought I would be old. When I was young, I never thought, am I going to be old? Old people, they're a different species of life. It's like that most wonderful thing, Hani Hani Bhutani Gachanti Amalayam, which Yudhisthira Maharaj said, the most wonderful thing is that we see everybody die and we think we are not going to die. So the same way, when I was young, even as a Hare Krishna devotee, I was seeing people get old. So my parents get old. My parents passed away, my grandparents passed away, my uncles and aunts, and everybody's gone, except for my brother. And I was thinking, I'm young. I'm not going to get old. I mean, even in my mind thinks like a young person. And Prabhupada said that, when Prabhupada was by the Yamuna River at the Keshi Ghat, and he was having the devotees bathe, he just couldn't refrain. He went into the water, even though he was quite old, and I think it was quite chilly at that particular point, but Prabhupada went in the water because he, you always think like a young person, because eternally we are young. And, it's very frustrating having young consciousness and being in an old body. It is extremely frustrating. Extremely frustrating, because the same desires and the same inclinations and everything like that are there, and you like to do so many things, and then it doesn't work. And then you see that's Krishna sending you a message, buddy. Be humble. You know, there is such a thing as old age, and God knows you, there's such a thing as leaving the money. You're thinking, not me. Everybody else, not me. Okay, thank you. That's what it means to be dependent on Krishna. So we want to thank everybody for attending this class. Hopefully we'll give a class tomorrow. There is a slight possibility, not personality, a slight possibility that I won't give the class tomorrow because there may be a community gathering, picnic, or whatever, and I may attend it at the same time as the class. I am not sure about that. That is up in the air. So we will have to see if that is what Krishna wants. Because it's really hot outside, I'm sort of reluctant to, even at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, it is extremely hot and humid here. So, and as we get older, we're more affected by the heat. Of course, I've been out today, but Krishna's protecting me, and Krishna's protecting me by sending old age too. So that's nice of him. Nice of him, you know, whatever Krishna does, that's his mercy, that's his protection. And he's really interesting, the things he does. Okay, on that happy note, let's end class for this evening, and we'll hopefully see everybody tomorrow. If not, then the next day will be the Sunday feast. Anyway, we'll figure things out. We'll send notices out as we continue this Sri Upanishad reading. All glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada.